Today, if you watch the mainstream media, you will see politicians debating whether the United States should send more money to Eastern Europe or more weapons to the Middle East or build more bases in the Pacific. They argue about democracy, freedom, and human rights. But they are completely ignoring the absolute, terrifying mathematical reality behind all of these decisions. The question is not whether America has the moral high ground. The question is, can a country with a $39 trillion national debt actually afford to stop fighting? I am Professor Jiang Miller. Today we are going to look at the American debt trap. We are going to look at the military-industrial complex, and I am going to explain exactly why Washington is terrified of global peace and how this trap guarantees that your cost of living will never, ever go back to normal. I will break this down step by step in plain, simple English. Part 1. The illusion of the peacemaker and the war economy. Right now, you pay your taxes and you assume your government wants a stable, peaceful world. You assume that wars are unfortunate accidents and that politicians are desperately trying to find diplomatic solutions. But this is an illusion. The American economy is no longer a manufacturing economy. Decades ago, the United States built things: cars, televisions, steel. Today, the most reliable and profitable export of the United States government is security. To understand the trap we are in today, you have to look at the math. The United States currently holds over $39 trillion in national debt. To prevent the economy from collapsing, the government must constantly print more money and issue more bonds. But why does the rest of the world buy those bonds? Why do foreign countries lend money to a nation that is $39 trillion in the red? Because they are buying American protection. Japan, South Korea, Germany, and dozens of other nations buy American debt and use the American dollar because the U.S. military provides a security umbrella over their economies. The United States is the global policeman, and the world pays for that police force by absorbing American debt. But what happens if the world becomes peaceful? What happens if there are no more threats? Part 2. The Ceasefire Trap. This brings us to the trap that nobody in Washington wants to talk about: the ceasefire trap. This is what the media is completely hiding from you. They treat peace treaties and ceasefires as victories. But for the modern American financial system, widespread global peace is an economic disaster. If conflicts in Eastern Europe end, and if the Middle East suddenly stabilizes, the massive, urgent demand for American military protection drops. If European nations no longer feel threatened, they stop increasing their defense budgets, and they stop buying billions of dollars worth of American-made fighter jets, missiles, and defense systems. If the fear disappears, the demand for the US dollar and US Treasury bonds weakens. And if foreign nations stop buying American debt, the entire $39 trillion pyramid begins to shake. Washington knows this. The defense contractors know this. They are trapped. They cannot afford a massive global war because it would lead to nuclear annihilation. But they also cannot afford total global peace because the American debt machine would grind to a halt. They need a state of permanent, managed conflict. Forever wars. Part 3. The fatal domino effect. Now I want you to pay close attention because this is the exact sequence of events that shows why there is no way out of this trap and how it will eventually collapse the system. Once this cycle accelerates, no president can stop it. Step 1. The United States must project power. To justify its global presence and keep allies dependent, Washington must constantly intervene in foreign conflicts, arming proxies and sending carrier strike groups across the globe. Step 2. These interventions are incredibly expensive. The U.S. government does not have the tax revenue to pay for these overseas operations, so they must add hundreds of billions of dollars to the national deficit every single year. Step 3. Because the deficit is exploding, the Federal Reserve is forced to step in. They must print massive amounts of new money out of thin air to cover the government spending. Step 4. The tipping point. The more money the Federal Reserve prints to fund the military and pay the interest on the debt, the less your money is worth. This is the definition of inflation. The government is essentially taxing your savings account to pay for bombs dropping thousands of miles away. Step 5. As inflation rises at home, the American public becomes angry. To calm the public, politicians promise more social spending, more subsidies, and lower interest rates. But they still have to fund the global military machine. Step 6. The final domino. The government is caught in an impossible loop. If they cut military spending, the empire collapses, allies abandon the dollar, and the $39 trillion debt implodes. If they keep spending, they must print more money, causing hyperinflation at home. The system eats itself. There is no way out. Part 4. The price you pay at the grocery store. Many people ask, why should I care about defense budgets? Why should I care about proxy wars? I just want to pay my rent and feed my family. But you are paying for this trap every single day. You do not get a bill in the mail that says military intervention tax. Instead, you pay it at the grocery store. When a carton of eggs doubles in price, that is not just corporate greed. That is the hidden tax of a $39 trillion debt. When you go to buy a house and the mortgage rate is so high that you cannot afford the monthly payment, that is the direct result of the government borrowing trillions of dollars to maintain a global empire. The Federal Reserve has to keep rates high to attract buyers for that massive debt. You are being squeezed from both sides. Your wages are buying less and your borrowing costs are going up. The American middle class is slowly being liquidated to finance a geopolitical strategy that cannot be sustained. Part 5. The echo of history. People think the American financial system is too big to fail. They think the government will always find a way to balance the books. But history tells us a very different, very brutal story. Look at the Soviet Union in the 1980s. The Soviet Union did not collapse because they were invaded by a foreign army. They were not conquered. They collapsed from within. They tried to maintain a massive global military footprint, fighting a war in Afghanistan and trying to match the United States in an endless arms race. Their economy was a fraction of the size they needed it to be, but they refused to cut military spending. They printed rubles, they hid their inflation, and they lied to their citizens. Eventually, the math caught up with them. The system simply broke. The shelves in the grocery stores went empty, the currency became worthless, and the empire dissolved. America is walking down the exact same path. We are trying to outspend the entire world, fighting economic wars with China, proxy wars with Russia, and maintaining hundreds of bases globally, all while carrying a debt burden that can never mathematically be repaid. The trap is set. The $39 trillion debt is not just a number on a screen, it is a financial black hole. The mainstream media will continue to show you political debates, distracting you with local arguments about who should be in the White House, while the foundations of the economy crumble beneath your feet. The goal of this analysis is not to cause panic. Panic is what happens when you are blind to the reality of the situation. The goal is to help you see the economic chessboard clearly. You must understand that the era of low inflation and cheap living is over, because the cost of maintaining the American empire has simply become too high. You need to prepare your finances. You need to understand how inflation works, and you need to protect your wealth with hard assets that cannot be printed by a central bank. If you want to understand the real truth behind the headlines, and if you want clear, simple breakdowns of the macroeconomic forces shaping our world, subscribe to the channel right now. And I want to ask you a question. When the debt trap finally closes, which sector of the American economy do you think will break first? Will it be the housing market, the banking system, or the US dollar itself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next breakdown.